Hi, are you an Amazon Prime member? Do you have 5 minutes? Then you could support us with $5 a month for free. Head to escapeartists.net/Twitch for a walkthrough.
Escape Pod, Episode 915, The Confessionist, by Ava Kelly.
Hello, and welcome to Escape Pod, your weekly science fiction podcast. I'm your host this week, Tina Connolly, and I am here to bring you The Confessionist by Ava Kelly. This story first appeared in the anthology Community of Magic Pens, edited by Edie E. Bell and released by Athos Arts. Ava Kelly is a non-binary speculative writer and engineer. Secretly a pile of cats in a trench coat, Ava's goal is to bring into the world more tales of friendship and compassion, dedicated to trope subversion and stories that give the void a voice. A Romanian living in Norway, Ava is an avid explorer of culture and its reflection upon life and creativity, both in art and in tech design. Among their works are the fantasy novel Havascati, which received the Rainbow Award for Best Asexual Debut Book, the short story A Sudden Displacement of Matter, part of the Lambda-nominated anthology Transgalactic Bike Ride, feminist bicycle science fiction stories of transgender and non-binary adventures, and the illustrated dual-language book of non-binary fairy tales Aliatera, Stories from the Dragon Realm, as well as various other short stories in magazines and anthologies. You can find them online at avakellyfiction.com. Your narrator this week is Ben Gideon. Ben lives in Denmark, where he works an ordinary job in the healthcare sector. He's newer to narration, but is a long-time horror and sci-fi geek. He's very happy to be working with a podcast he's enjoyed listening to for years. Your audio producer this week is Summer Brooks. So get ready to hear the confessions, because it's story time.
The Confessionist by Ava Kelly. Read by Ben Gideon. Veman pauses, standing on the wet sidewalk. Underneath the overcast sky, twilight stretches through the sloping city. Wealth lives here, in sterile houses carefully hidden behind designer bushes and fences. Not even petrichor feels natural this far across the megapolis. No stench permeates the air. No visible evidence of human misery, although Veman knows from experience these walls hide just as many vile actions as the paper-thin constructs at the other end of civilization. The evening is chill enough that Veman sees his breaths as he exhales. It fits this appointment in a way. All day he's been followed by a lingering impression that he's about to trade his soul away. For almost 20 years he's worked as a confessionist. The only job he could ever take. Young and untrained, but already buried under unbearable debt. Society needs you, they told him at recruitment. You'd be doing the world a favor. Veman snorts quietly to himself. The only favor he's been doing has been to ease abject consciences, except for the children. Sometimes he confesses children, and their pain is almost always inflicted by others. They were all worth it, though rare enough to forget how it feels to actually help someone, instead of simply dampening the guilt bred by one's actions, consequences intended or not. The house up ahead sits in heavy grey, made of dull steel and concrete and glass, as ashen as the rest of the buildings around it. Cutting through the front garden, the path to his latest client winds in a bend of stone slabs. This one had specifically requested him, even offered a hefty payment for the service. His grip tightens. The squeak of his briefcase handle gets lost in the whoosh of the high train flying up above. The entire trip here, he's been wondering how much of an abomination he'd have to take on for the offered honorarium. He hasn't wavered, though. Can't. Not when it means he can forego the 50 or so confessions he'd need to finally settle his score. He'd be free. He will be free after this. But will he be able to carry it? Whatever the monster in this house did, Veemund will have to watch it, assimilate its effects, and live with them forever. With a trembling hand, he touches the back of his shaved head over the place where the neural implant sits. "Last one," he whispers, and steps forward. A smiling man answers the door at the first ring. Medium build, a little shorter than Veemund, clean-shaven, wearing a dark sweater the same grey of the concrete and the sky and the house he occupies. "Hi, I'm Obi. Please come in." Obi keeps smiling, and Veemund shudders. He's never been afraid before. After removing his shoes and coat, Veemund follows further inside. When instructed, he sits at the dining table. Its glass surface shines pristine, just like everything else in this place. The space is wide and open, any separation made from transparent material. No color, no personal touch whatsoever. Even the tray with tea that Obi sets on the table permeates sameness. While he pours and serves, Veemund retrieves his tools from the briefcase. He sets them down on a paper pad between them after Obi takes the opposite seat. He's dropped his facade of hospitality, instead studying the items with an intensity Veemund's rarely seen before. "The pulses," Veemund begins the requisite explanation, opening the small box to reveal the round neuro actuators. "Go onto your temples. I've done this before. They modify the neural connections forming the memory that I write down." Obi picks up the pen, twists it around. "With this thing, coded in enough sensors to read my entire mind." Veemund swallows, loud enough in the silence that Obi notices. He leans over the table slightly. "Your implant will absorb my experiences as if it were your own, and what remains will be distant for me, like a scar over a healed wound. That's how it works." Veemund's voice cracks, but Obi doesn't comment on that, so Veemund counts his lucky stars and tries to move forward. "How long ago was your last procedure? If less than a year, I'm afraid we can't continue at this time. Health concerns, you see." Leaning back in his chair, Obi gestures at the tea, and Veemund shakes his head. "I was a child, back in the Tsar burrows," Obi finally says. "I had witnessed a terrible thing during the riots. It left me distraught. No, damaged. I was damaged. In fact, it was you who confessed it." "I'm sorry," Veemund interrupts. "You must be mistaken. I've never treated a boy in Tsar." A wry twist of lips, and Obi's eyes darken in the lowering light. "Yes, you did." It clicks immediately. Veemund's perspective shifts from dread toward curiosity. My apologies. One should never assume, least of all me." "Unnecessary," Obi says, lifting a long-fingered hand. "You've been in my head, but couldn't have seen what I wasn't aware of at the time. Understanding came later for me." Veemund nods. The tea by his elbow steams with a gentle aroma, and despite himself, he picks up the cup, takes a sip, under Obi's assessing gaze. Obi should be uncomfortable. The confession always is. And yet, here, in this cold grey house, the new information soothes something long-torn beneath Veemund's skin. The first to break the stillness is Obi, who attaches the pulses to his temples. Veemund's pad swooshes over the glass as Obi pulls it closer. "It's part of why you're here, really," he says. "You gave me serenity, peace of mind." He bends over the paper, smoothing it out with one thumb. The other clicks on the power button of the pen, and Veeman's implant fires. His eyelids flutter until the connection finally settles. Eyes downcast, Obi breathes in deeply, his growing confidence resonating through the uplink. I wanted to thank you. Easing my pain gave me clarity and presence. It allowed me to learn and live and make something of myself. It let me discover who I am, what I want, what I love, how to love, both myself and others. The tip of the pen touches the paper. It was spring, March 12th. At that time I was exploring what it meant to be me. Half wary, half excited, a lot afraid. Didn't feel comfortable in public, didn't want to explain myself again. I remember trees in bloom in the park. It wasn't that warm outside, but the sun was shining that day and I'd missed it. So I went to sit on a bench in the farthest corner I could find, hoping nobody would see me, wishing to remain invisible. A woman strolled by at some point. She had long grey hair, wrinkles on her entire face, a large hat with a red bow shielding her from the sunshine. She asked, "Do you have the time, young man?" I recall experiencing true, pure joy. It was the most vivid moment of absolute and sincere happiness I have ever felt. Veeman gasps as Obi's intense memory gathers in a knot in the middle of his chest. Across the table, Obi sets the pen down, eyes back on Veeman. Now we shared. Veeman can't find the words to reply, but he clutches onto the feeling with everything he has. He hasn't. Without you, I wouldn't have been able to create this. Obi presses both palms onto the tabletop. The world blooms with color. The walls, the ceiling, the floor. Obi himself is covered in swirls moving over his dark skin in mesmerizing waves. Everything in Veeman's body comes to a halt for one heartbeat and restarts with the surges of radiance around them. Cyber Painter, Veeman rasps. Obi grins. Wide, warm. Veeman blinks the blur away and wipes the wetness off his face with shaky fingers. In front of him is not a monster, but the infamous inventor of the holographic technology that spread through the privileged layers of society, increasing in value as it gained more and more uses, like the silent garden back at headquarters, where only the bosses are allowed. But then the artist donated it to the whole megapolis. It spans all districts, there to feed all souls equally, to nourish hope, to provide a ray of light in the harsh reality of the struggling and the unlucky. Some swear they feel strength to carry on when looking at his projections. Self-sustainable happiness, free for all. And then it hits Veeman. The job, the payment. He lunges for the pulses at Obi's temples, but he steps away easily. I can't numb your good memory. Obi shrugs. It's yours now. Take care of it for me. Please don't what? Thank you for saving me? It doesn't work that way, Veeman says with alarm. Unsanctioned emotion categories are erased. Fortunately, you don't work for them anymore. I wired your fee this morning. The hacker I hired has already performed the last of your payments for you, and handed in your resignation. It finished processing right before you knocked on my door. Veeman staggers back. That's too much. Too much kindness. I wouldn't even have lived to see that day at the park if it hadn't been for you and your magic pen. Search for me in your databanks. I know you can. Sure enough, it comes to the forefront of Veeman's mind. The saddest, smallest child. His first client, whom he'd coaxed into drawing the scary Boo. The hurt from back then returns to spill over Veeman's cheeks again. Don't you get it? You saved me so I can change the world. Starting with you. As he speaks, Obi rounds the table until he's close enough to touch the side of Veeman's neck. No more debt. No more forcing people to carry pain and secrets. No more high-tech sin-eaters absolving humanity of its horrors. His palm slides, fingertips reaching the surgical scar on the back of Veeman's head. This gift should only be used to heal. Will you help me make that happen? Veeman nods, unable to find his voice, but Obi must get it, because he grips Veeman's shoulder with his free hand and whispers, echoes joy in polychrome brightness. Then welcome, Confessionist, to your new life.
And we're back, and again that was The Confessionist by Ava Kelly, narrated by Ben Gideon. About this story, the author says, "This story features a joyful moment very dear to me. While exploring beyond the gender I was assigned at birth, I experienced such a moment that brought me an unparalleled, unforgettable feeling. Now I'm sharing it with you." And about this story, I say, I thought this story was truly delightful. One of my favorite things about it is that it so clearly sets you up for very bad things to happen. Our protagonist has spent 20 years listening to terrible things, taking them on to ease the burden of those who pay for the service. Now this new client is willing to pay a small fortune, so the crime must be terrible, right? I truly did not see the twist into happiness coming, and that release of narrative tension absolutely did produce Kelly's intended effect for me, the moment of euphoria. In this case, my vicarious happiness for the protagonist. I love that not only does this particular confessionist get a relief to the end of his career, but that it's a specific result of the kindness he did so long ago. He tells us right at the beginning that he is happy when he can help children who have never caused the terrors in their memories. And Obe was there, Obe saw him, recognized him. He is witnessed, the way Obe was witnessed in flashback, each of them truly seen, and each of them receiving a moment of euphoria in that seeing. Escape Pod is part of the Escape Artist Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Don't change it, don't sell it, please go forth and share it. How do you share it, you ask? Well, in addition to your social media of choice, consider rating and or reviewing us on podcast listening sites such as Apple or Google. More reviews makes for more discoverability, makes for more Escape Pod for you. Escape Pod relies on the generous donations of listeners exactly like you, and remember that Patreon subscribers have access to exclusive merchandise and can be automatically added to our Discord, where you can chat with other fans as well as our staff members. So, if you enjoyed our story this week, then consider going to escapepod.org or patreon.com/EAPodcasts and casting your vote for more stories that fill the world with color. Our opening and closing music is by Daikaiju at daikaiju.org. And our closing quotation this week is from Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "Occasionally in life, there are those moments of unutterable fulfillment, which cannot be completely explained by those symbols called words. Their meanings can only be articulated by the inaudible language of the heart." Thanks for listening, and have fun.